Gala greetings. Welcome to Sasquatch Island. My name is Tom Seawood. I'll be your host and Indian guide as I share some insight into Sasquatch, or in my language, from the Kwakwaka'wakw people from northeastern Vancouver Island, Chonahua. And that is Chonahua right behind me right there. There's Bakwis, the little one, and natural carving from someone on Vancouver Island, Liam Tromans. He's a real good Sasquatch carver on Vancouver Island. Anyway, I'm here in my garage studio, set it up for the weekend, do a few video casts for Sasquatch Island, Seasons of the Sasquatch on YouTube, which we're just starting. And of course, I'll be doing some audio podcasts for Monster X Radio for my podcast series called Sasquatch Island. Highly recommend going to monsterxradio.com. We are having some website issues, but just be patient, keep checking in. Gunnar Monson told me yesterday that he's going to rectify the problem. But anyway, I've been getting a lot of comments and questions regarding tree structures, if we have them here in the Pacific Northwest and the coastal region, especially on Vancouver Island, and what my thoughts were about tree structures. Well, we do get them on Vancouver Island. I have seen a few in my times, but when I'm out in bush, I'm never really looking for them. One of the first things, though, is we got to remember Sasquatch are hunter-gatherers. They're apex omnivores. So they're like the chimpanzees and great apes, monkeys. They're always going to be looking for high accumulation of protein in a seasonal time of the year. And they're semi-nomadic, migrating around. And they're concentrating on eating and, of course, sleeping during the daytime, because we First Nations know that they're nocturnal. That's why Chonahua behind me has sleepy eyes, because when the humans come across them in daytime, they're sleeping, because they're what I call the other tribe, the humans of the night. Well, with the tree structures that I've seen, they've been pretty primitive. You know, they weren't intricately made structures. And I know, being a bushman, when I've been out in bush, I never bring a tent. You know, I bring a tarp and a blanket and good clothing, rain gear, and of course my smokes and my coffee, my gun, my knife, and some fishing gear and fire starter. When I'm out there, it usually takes me under 10 minutes to make my sleeping structure. You know, generally it's just under a tarp, under a big spruce tree or an overhang of rock, or under a big windfall cedar or spruce tree. But at times when it is cold and we got to hunker down, I'll make what I was taught in Omaha Indian Reservation by Lucas White, earth houses. These are just boughs put over usually a windfall, small tree that's about that far off the ground. And that's one of the big mistakes I see with shows like Naked and Afraid. Everyone's building these big monstrosity condo complexes that when you're inside them, you might be partially dry if it's raining, but there's no retention of body heat. So what we do is we build them so that we have to crawl into these structures. We're not in there to sit up and stand up. We're in there to get warm and sleep and stay dry if we can. So we put boughs over a windfall tree. So picture a tree like that, and you just wrap it in boughs so it's about 4 feet high. Put anything you can, try to find what you can for waterproofing, you know, big fronds of something if you can find them. Throw your tarp on top of it and more branches. And then that little hollow area that's about 4 feet high and 7 feet long, and just as wide as you can crawl in there, about that wide. You stuff it full of anything soft. Grass if you can find it, dry, ferns, hemlock boughs. You break the hemlock branches in the Pacific Northwest off the big heavy branches, and it's soft, and you just layer that thing right up to your roof and just keep stuffing it, so that when you do go to sleep, you crawl in. Usually you wiggle in with your feet or come from the other side and punch your way through, just like a squirrel or a mouse or even a rat will do in their nests. And I know everyone's come across nests of rodents, and it's just a compact little place they can crawl into the grasses and anything else they've accumulated to retain the body heat. And that's the kind of structures I make. And those are the ones that I'm interested in. The ones that I've found in my time have been usually on the beaches, at the head of the beach, where the winter storms and a high tide have pushed big, massive logs that thick in diameter. You know, some of them are 40 feet long. They're right up under the bows. Well, on the other side of it, you'll often find a driftwood lean-to structure. But it's not waterproof. There's gaps in it and holes. And what I've seen with these, you know, sure, I've come across some big ones under deadfall cedar trees in some regions. And, you know, you definitely could tell Sasquatch or something was, you know, taking shelter in there. And they're generally waterproof. But the smaller ones I've come across, the lean-to structures against fallen trees or driftwood logs at the head of the beach, and you got to remember, tides fluctuate. So they're low tide and high tide is a big difference each day, each week, and throughout the month. So it's only rarely that we get the big 16 to 17 foot high tides that get up to where those big logs are. Most of the time the high tide's way below on the beach. So whatever was sleeping under those lean-tos was taking shelter, I don't see, from the rain other than the canopy of trees above and the boughs, but mainly from the prevailing winds. So the southeast in the wintertime, which is our cold one. In the spring and summer, we have our northwest prevailing winds here in the coast region of the Pacific Northwest. And I've looked at these structures and said, you know, they're not using it for shelter from rain. To me, it's kind of like a kid with a security blanket. That's what I think they are. They're structures that, number one, help with the scent and sound and visual, seeing a structure that someone is occupying this area. Could be a message to fellow Sasquatches. But also, I think it's that security. They got a place, you know, that's semi-sheltered. They can crawl into this little lean-to or little rough form that looks like an earth house with boughs. And the other thing that really intrigues me is I know from the First Nations culture that in the old times, before contact and just afterwards, when a woman was giving birth, it was a sacred, private happening. So they would often go out, the midwives, and build a little structure so that the woman could go in there and give birth away from the tribe. Because in the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation, when you read the anthropological reports, the anthropologists interviewing my ancestors, they found that when a woman was giving birth or in their monthly menstrual cycle, it was forbidden for them to be around the males. They didn't want to weaken them, and you know, we're a warring nation, so there's many beliefs pertaining to that. So they used to have these menstrual huts that they would go out and build. And you can imagine a pregnant or a woman, you know, getting into her cycle. You know, we've seen them as males. They get crabby and, you know, they don't really want to do a lot. You know, so I could see them building a structure so that when a tribe member was walking through the forest, they would see one of those structures and right away turn and walk away. They knew that there was either a pregnant woman giving birth in there or there was a woman in there during her monthly. So their humans, male and female, were forbidden to be together during those two times of a woman's cycle in life. So that's something I've thought about with Sasquatch. Because they seem so similar to the Pacific Northwest in regards to our tribal territorial boundaries, our territories that encompass high protein areas like a river or a shellfish beach, possibly they're doing the same thing. I know it's just speculation, it's just a theory, but it's something to think about when you see these structures that don't look like they're waterproof very much, don't look like they would retain heat, don't look like they would, you know, offer that much shelter. I think they're more like signposts, so that other Sasquatches possibly know that that's an area the males are forbidden to go to because maybe there's a female in cycle or giving birth. And that's just one of the things I've come up with. I know it's something that you're not going to hear in other podcasts or Facebook groups. Pardon me. But that's what's unique about Sasquatch Island and Seasons of the Sasquatch that I do, and with what I do with Monster X Radio and when I go to conferences and talk. I'm bringing 55 years of being an Indian, 45 years of being a commercial fisherman, well over 35 years being a bushman, that when I wasn't commercial fishing or being a hunting guide, I was out in the bush, living there, off-grid. And because I've been brought up in the native ways, and because I've researched constantly the native ways pre-contact and just afterwards, I'm able to bring a First Nations anthropological perspective into the Sasquatch equation, as I call it. You know, it's just something new to think about. You know, tree structures, number one, you know, you got to remember that it's a lot of energy to waste in some of these structures you see out there that people post on the social media. And I think they were made by humans, you know, just out of pranks or just having fun or maybe making a shelter. And then months later, years later, a human stumbles across it and right away they go, oh, it's a Sasquatch structure. And then, of course, there's those tree structures that I think 85% or more are natural occurrences. I don't think Sasquatches are going to waste a lot of energy and time weaving trees and placing them up. The odd one, yes, totally believe in the teepee structures and some of the other structures that we see of accumulations of trees and that like that are markers, tribal, territorial markers to let other Sasquatches in their migration, because they're semi-nomadic, know that this territory is occupied. No different than a bear or a cougar scratching a tree up to mark its area with urine. Wolves and dogs, they do it, and every other critter does it as well. So why not Sasquatch? And I think that's what the structures are all about. So some of the ones, you know, I like to joke about, you know, you've seen in Sasquatch Island, there's this artist, I think from Europe, who did these intricate woven tree structures, and people were calling it portholes and that. And I joked about it because I don't believe in portal jumping, mind-speaking, cloaking, UFO flying, transform into an orb Sasquatch. And that's another question I get asked about orbs. And I'll just say it right now. I think orbs are the lolilo, the ghosts of humans. I don't think they have anything to do with Sasquatch. But there's two of my beliefs and perspectives from being a bushman and being an Indian for 55 years. And hopefully I answered some of your people's questions about me, what I think about tree structures. In all honesty, I don't think much, because I don't waste my time out in the bush looking for tree structures or glyphs, which I think are, no, I don't follow glyphs whatsoever. But to me, when I go to the bush, I'm either harvesting or hunting. And when I'm out there investigating for Sasquatch, I'm looking for them. And I know they're not going to give me that perfect silhouette from here up, like that carving there in wood. They're going to be blended and all twisted against a tree or bushes, laying down, hiding, tree peeking, as we know. So you really have to use your eyes as a hunter. You know, I've hunted deer. I don't look for deer horns and ears. I look for the white muzzle. I always look for white out in Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, in the logging slashes, because when I see that white and then I look, then I see the form of the deer, it's generally a big buck looking at me or lying down sleeping in the middle of the slash or up on a little knoll. And that's how I get the big hat racks that I've harvested as a deer hunter. I'm looking for not silhouette of the deer. I'm not looking for a silhouette of a Sasquatch. I'm looking for the form blended into the environment. Just all part of their camouflaging. And I think that's what tree structures are for the female Sasquatches, possibly. And then, of course, we have the ones like a security blanket for them just to crawl under and maybe feel a little bit more secure because there's a rogue around. But I thank you very much, and the language of my people, halakilasla. Go in peace.